Welcome to EXP, TED-style talks where we're farming XP for your brain, one idea at a time. I'm Dr. Amelia Herbst, and today we're diving into the Zeitgeist of Pop Culture, the Elder Scrolls, to explore why civilians of Tamriel, and the player, choose to worship Daedra. You're here, you're curious. Let's earn some EXP. If you've ever played the Elder Scrolls, you're probably familiar with the Daedric princes. They're chaotic, powerful forces in Nirn that like to mess around with the mortals sometimes. What is it about these chaotic, sometimes downright malevolent beings that compel us to follow them, risk everything, and even sacrifice our very souls? So why do we mere mortals worship Daedra? What makes someone, or a group of someones, worship a being who could potentially twist your life into a nightmare? Let's break this down looking at different reasons we follow not just gods, but individuals and leaders that might not necessarily be good for us. Let's talk about morality. Good and evil can be complicated to define, but for the purposes of this video, think for a second about the alignment charts in games like Dungeons & Dragons. To be good is to be altruistic, to have concern or respect for others' lives, compassionate, helpful, and honest. Evil is kind of the opposite. It is to act in self-interest and to act in a way that does not care for others, including being vengeful and cruel. Aedra are often seen as the good gods, sacrificing themselves for the creation and well-being of mortal kind. But Daedric princes, they're not bound by such rigid ideals. Some act out of self-interest, others out of vengeance, while a few genuinely have an interest in helping. But normally that help comes with strings attached, or specifically out of spite for another Daedric prince. To give an example, if we like to follow morally good or morally good-seeming individuals, Azora is a Daedric prince that is known to be one of the kindest. She's a welcoming voice to the player when they first show up in Morrowind, in the Elder Scrolls 3 game Morrowind. Compared to some of the other folks we'll talk about, Azora for the most part is more morally good, and therefore a god that seems best to follow. If we want a prince that gives us a bit of a challenge, I personally give the neutral to evil title to Hircine, the Prince of the Hunt. He is also seen as fair, but brutal. His followers, like the Nords and Khajiit, worship him for the strength and honor, believing that their greatest test of worthiness comes from surviving his hunts. When you talk to Hircine, he says that he is not into vengeance. He is into the joy of the hunt, the challenge of the hunt. If you are the prey in a hunt and are able to turn the tables and become the hunter, he will then reward you because he is impressed by your skill. He is impressed by the initiative that you took in order to become the hunter. For him, the hunt is all that matters. What about evil, you say? Just wait, we'll get there. But first, let's talk about the Daedric princes with less good intentions. For many Daedric princes, their appeal lies in what they offer. They intend to engage their followers with offering things like power, influence, or fulfillment of their deepest desires. Whether it's a chance to gain supernatural abilities, live in luxury, or find community, the princes will promise something tantalizing, something that may feel unattainable to this particular mortal or in the mortal realm in general. So if we choose to worship a specific Daedric prince based off of what they offer, what if that offer is knowledge? Knowledge brings us to look at the Daedric prince of knowledge, Hermaeus Mora. To worship him is to gain access to forbidden knowledge or deep secrets of the universe. His followers believe that the acquisition of knowledge itself is the highest form of power, and it is worth sacrificing at any cost in order to get it. And when you become his champion, you are gifted with different sets of skills based off of knowledge. However, many folks that end up following Hermaeus Mora don't necessarily live freely. Many of them are scholars that are spent wandering the halls of his realm of Apocrypha. So you may be thinking, some of these groups kind of feel like cults. Well, many of the Daedric princes operate like cult leaders. They're charismatic, manipulative, and capable of extracting absolute loyalty from their followers. They offer rewards to those that are loyal, but those rewards often come at a steep price. In the case of Mehrunes Dagon, the Prince of Destruction, as well as the main antagonist in The Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion, his followers are drawn to the promises of ultimate power. His cult, the Mythic Dawn, believed that by helping him bring the end of the world, they would gain eternal glory and immortality. But at the end, as with most cults, those promises were empty. Though they were able to be told of something of paradise, they were likely never going to see anything that's similar to a paradise. The followers who gave everything to Mehrunes Dagon were doomed to serve him in a twisted, destructive cycle where their ambition led to their own downfall. This is the dark side of worshiping Daedric princes. It's just not about the power, it's about the control. Followers may find themselves ensnared in their devotion, unable to break free of the promises made by their deities. However, that's not exactly all of it. What's particularly fascinating about Daedric worship is the role of community. Many of the princes create cults that offer followers a sense of belonging, whether it's the endless revelry of Sanguine or the intellectual camaraderie of Hermaeus Mora's devotees. These groups provide something important: connection. If we look at Sanguine, all of his followers happen to come to him because they want to engage in endless revelry. Sanguine enjoys jokes and pranks, and he enjoys drink, and he enjoys dancing. And a lot of the followers that he has want the same thing. If you go to visit his shrine in Oblivion and you talk to the followers and worshippers that are there, they all talk about not wanting to return to their normal lives and wanting to live in revelry forever. And if you think about it, if you connect with others that have the same ideal, you're less likely going to want to go back to your normal lives if not only is it endless fun, but also if you've got folks to enjoy that fun with. Followers of Daedric princes might find themselves in situations where they're feeling seen, heard, and at times appreciated. Perhaps they've suffered trauma or have been excluded from society, and the Daedric cults offer them a place to belong. It's not always about the deity, it's about the sense of unity and shared purpose that a cult provides. It's important to see that these communities become so ingrained in their followers' lives that even when faced with the darkest of consequences, they feel too invested to leave. Which then brings us to our most evil Daedric prince. Molag Bal, the Daedric prince of domination, and pretty much everything else bad that you can think of, has a following still. However, Molag Bal's following, you gotta put quotations around that. His followers are so often forced into servitude, either through violence or coercion, and they worship him out of fear, not love. His cult is one of cruelty and of submission, and though there are those that fall under his sway, like those that want to become vampires or have some form of power, they're typically driven by desperation, by the connections of folks that are already in the cult, or by their own twisted desires. So why do we worship Daedric princes? The answer, as we've seen, isn't super simple. We worship them for power, for knowledge, for belonging, or sometimes even just for the promise of the escape from the ordinary. But with every boon, there's a cost. Mortals who enter those bargains risk being consumed by the very powers they seek to wield. They risk their souls, their morality, and even their sanity. In the end, the worship of Daedric princes reflects something deeply human, our desire for power, purpose, and connection. And just like in our own world, sometimes it's the most dangerous promises that seem the most irresistible. And with that, you've just earned some serious EXP. If you liked this EXP talk, then you're really going to like the Psychgeist of Pop Culture, The Elder Scrolls, where we talk about things like avoiding the main questline and what makes Skyrim so iconic. And the best part is, it's completely free to download. So grab your copy and keep farming that XP.